Everyone, and thank you so much for being here with us this evening. My name is Roseanne Santos. I am the Director of Alumni Engagement at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and I welcome you to our webinar, Our Women in Law Enforcement and Why We Need More of Them. I'm so excited to have all of you here today. I do want to share with you a little bit about who we are, what our office does, and then we're going to just go right into our webinar. So with that, I'm going to show you a brief slide right there. And I just want to share with all of you, this is who we are. This is our contact information, and the Office of Alumni the Office of Alumni Relations and Annual Giving provides all of this great programming because of donor support. We invite you to support our students and alumni by making a gift to the college. Your gift will help provide scholarships, paid internships, emergency funding, and the kind of programming you are attending tonight. So we have our email there, we have our link there, and we hope to hear from you soon. And we look forward to providing you with more opportunities. Thank you. This evening, I have the pleasure and the honor to introduce to you our moderator, who is our alumni from John Jay College. His name is Bray Barnes, and he received a dual BA MA from John Jay. And I am excited that he is here. I was just sharing the story that he and I have been talking since the summer to bring this to you and to make this happen. And so I have so much gratitude for John Jay alum like him, who are always so open to being leaders and assistants and bringing all of these people together. He did this, not me. He brought all of these fabulous women together through his connections and his contacts so that you can have an event like this evening. Bray Barnes has had a noted career in the business, military, legal, and law enforcement professions in both the public and private sector. Currently, he is the vice chair of Municipal Finance and Service Corps, a fintech company that provides government arbitrage for a variety of municipal, city, county, and state public entities and jurisdictions. Additionally, he is a member of the Board of Governors, Global Society of Homeland and National Security Professionals. He serves as a senior fellow to Global Security and Innovative Strategies in Washington, D.C., a security consulting and business advisory company whose principals are primarily former senior executives with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and lead for the National Sheriff's Association Global Center for Public Safety Institute for Cybersecurity. He has been an adjunct professor with the business and criminal law departments at both the College of New Jersey and Ocean County College, written academic courses for the Rutgers Institute for Emergency Preparedness and Homeland Security, developed the first Homeland Security 2- and 4-year degree program in New Jersey, and served on the U.S. Department of Justice, COPS, Law Enforcement Recruitment in the 21st Century Committee, and recently was a panelist at the Forum on Training, Certification, and Diversity in Law Enforcement Task Force, implementing the President's Report on 21st Century Policing, enacting community-led policing throughout the country. Mr. Barnes was nominated and appointed by President George W. Bush to the U.S. Department of Justice, Coordinating Council for Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, chaired by the U.S. Attorney General, where he served 5 years until he entered the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, serving as Director, Senior Executive Service in Washington, D.C., directing the First Responder Program that provided interface, collaboration, and coordination with federal, state, county, tribal, and local law enforcement, fire, EMS, including providing collaboration with state and regional fusion centers and state offices of emergency management. He also served as chairman of the DHS Law Enforcement Council and the DHS First Responder Council. Additionally, Mr. Barnes held the position of Acting Chief Human Capital Officer, where he directed all aspects of human resources management for the 210,000 DHS employees, leading the department's human capital policy, strategic planning, education, recruitment and diversity, performance and workforce engagement, labor and employee relations, and other areas, as well as serving as the DHS representative member of the Intelligence Community Human Resources Council, Office of the Director of National Intelligence, holding top secret, sensitive, compartmented information clearances with intelligence community access. Mr. Barnes, a licensed attorney in New Jersey and Washington, D.C., has 30 years of experience in the legal profession, serving as an assistant county prosecutor and later in private practice, representing small to medium companies, Fortune 500 corporations, the Federal Air Marshals, various policemen's benevolent associations, and fraternal orders of police, as well as the New Jersey State Troopers Fraternal, Sergeants, and Superior Officers Association, and the State Troopers Foundation. He has also provided advice and worked with the Office of the Superintendent, New Jersey State Police, on the development of the Regional Operations Intelligence Fusion Center. Prior to Mr. Barnes's legal career, he served in law enforcement for 11 years, graduating from the New Jersey State Police Academy as class president. He was president of his local for the New Jersey State Policemen's Benevolent Association and later became a county detective. Mr. Barnes served on active duty with the United States Army as a radio operator during the Vietnam War. Upon graduation from Officer Candidate School as distinguished graduate, he served in various leadership roles and was later honorably discharged as a first lieutenant. He is a life member of the 101st Airborne Division Association. He is a lifelong member of the 101st Airborne Division Association, Vietnam Veterans of America, American Legion, and Association of the United States Army. While working full-time as a police officer, Mr. Barnes attended school at night for 7.5 years, earning an associate's degree from Brookdale Community College, a bachelor's degree summa cum laude, and master's degree from the City University of New York, John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and his Doctor of Jurisprudence from Seton Hall University Law School. Now, if that isn't the ultimate John Jay alum, I don't know what is. And with that, please welcome Mr. Bray Barnes, who will be moderating tonight's conversation. Thank you, Bray, for being here.
Thank you, Roseanne, and thank you so much for that introduction, albeit very long, and I apologize for that. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, so that's why it's so much diversity. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's truly a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to moderate this panel of outstanding women in law enforcement. Ladies, it is my thanks to each of you for taking time from your busy schedule to be part of this distinguished panel. So when I first went on the job, women in law enforcement were a rarity. Today, women hold positions in all aspects of law enforcement and are very much an integral part of protecting and serving their communities, their states, and the nation. Today's panelists have had successful law enforcement careers, achieved key leadership positions within their respective agencies. Congratulations to each one of you, and thank you so very much for your service and for paving the way for others to follow. So now let's start meeting some of these remarkable women. So I'm going to start off with my dear friend, Chief O'Toole. So Chief O'Toole, you have had senior leadership roles in law enforcement for 2 major cities, for the state, as well as for international law enforcement. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your career in law enforcement? Chief?
Well, thanks very much, Bray. And I really appreciate the opportunity to participate with all these rock stars tonight, yourself included, and some of my dear friends in law enforcement. I've really been looking forward to this, so thanks very much. And I have longstanding respect for John Jay College. I've spent a lot of time there. I've engaged with students over the years. I've engaged with faculty. I think it's a wonderful institution and really appreciate all the good work you've done in our line of business. If anybody ever told me when I was a youngster that I'd be a police officer, I mean, it just wasn't in the cards. In fact, women weren't hired in the Boston Police Department until as patrol officers until I was in college. And I remember watching on the TV news when they hired the first female patrol officers, and I thought, why would any woman in her right mind, want to do that job? And it was only a few years later that I actually accepted the job myself on a dare. I was in law school at the time. I attended law school at night, and I went along with a friend to take the police exam, never imagining I'd accept a job in policing. And a few years later, the list was established. They started to hire officers in Boston again. And on a dare from my law school classmates, I took the job, thinking I'd do it for a year or two. And here I am decades later. But I was only into it for a couple weeks when I realized I'd found my true vocation. I mean, I have loved every single day of my career, even on the worst of days. I've absolutely loved it. And I've had the opportunity, I rose through the ranks of policing in Massachusetts. I worked in both state and local policing. I kind of weaved in and out of state and local policing. I eventually served I started with Boston Police Department, eventually served as police commissioner in Boston, but I also had the privilege of working in the state police. I was the commander of the Special Operations Division in the state police, and then went on to be Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety for 4.5 years. I traveled over to Ireland unexpectedly to work on the peace process from 1998 till around 2000. Then returned to US law enforcement, and then again went to Ireland, to the Republic of Ireland, and served as the chief inspector of the Garda Síochána, the Irish National Police Service. And I know several Garda members have had the privilege of getting educational opportunities at John Jay College. I came back to the US and then went out to Seattle to serve as the chief of police there. I've really worked hard on reform in policing over the last 20 years on both sides of the Atlantic. And at the time, Seattle Police Department was going through a consent decree, and they were looking for somebody to lead that effort. So I served out in Seattle for just over 4 years and led that department to full and effective compliance with the federal consent decree. So again, I can't say there was anything at all strategic about my career. I took the job on a dare. I've always been kind of a risk taker. And then I would say that hard work and great mentors led me to where I am today. And I just feel so blessed that I've had all these unique opportunities.
Great. Thanks, Chief, for sharing with us your stellar career. Chief Moyer and Chief Williams, both of you have served as a police chief, not only in Tempe, Arizona and Phoenix respectively, but as chief of other police departments. So can you tell us a little bit about your careers as well and your service as chief for these various departments? So Chief Moyer, can we start with you?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for carving out time and inviting me to be part of this esteemed panel. I started as a community service officer, getting any job I could in a police department 32 years ago. I was with the Sacramento Police Department, where I served a variety of assignments, much like Kathleen O'Toole, who is a remarkable beacon of light and mentoring for all of us. I didn't have a real plan. I knew what spoke to my heart, what spoke to my soul. I knew I wanted to be a police officer in neighborhoods, and I knew I really wanted to focus in field operations. I took assignments that other people didn't want, those assignments that really helped develop my skills, build my character, and really solidify my reputation. I worked in every office in the Sacramento Police Department, where I served a really diverse community in the capital of California. After almost 2 decades, I left for a command opportunity. I served as a police chief in the San Francisco Bay Area in a great little town called El Cerrito, where I say that we had what San Francisco didn't have, which was a view of San Francisco. And that is really where I used all the skills that I learned coming up through the ranks in policing, in operations, investigations, administrative skills, leadership, all of those things to lead at the executive level. That's where I really started focusing on strategy and policy. And after just about 6 years, I left and came here to Arizona. I served as the chief until last Sunday for about 4.5 years here in Arizona through some really tough times. And like Kathleen O'Toole, I can say, even in the tough days, I was consistently learning. I was developing my character. I was leading people, and I absolutely loved the job, particularly because I got to serve in a city right beside my dear, dear friend, Jerry Williams, and to team with her to really influence policing and communities, safeguarding communities right here in the Valley in Arizona. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll turn it over to you, Jerry Williams.
Sylvia, thank you for that introduction. It's so great to see your face. Kathleen and others, you know, I'm humbled always to be thought of as someone wants to hear someone's story and perhaps change things. So much like Kathleen, much like Sylvia, I thought I was going to be something different than a police officer. So I had planned to be a flight attendant, travel the world in the skies, maybe take up acting or something. I have a fine arts degree. And lo and behold, that wasn't my path. And so I got hired with the police department, and I know Kathleen and Sylvia will both attest to this. When I became a police officer, my very first paycheck, I could not even believe that they were paying me to do this. Like, you're literally paying me to take care of people and make sure that the community is safe, which was just baffling to me. Unlike Kathleen, though, we did have a number of female leaders in the Phoenix Police Department. So born and raised in Phoenix, grew up in the Phoenix Police Department, rose through the ranks of assistant chief. 22 years in, I take a chance on myself, roll the dice, and I get picked to be the police chief in Oxnard, California, which is halfway between Los Angeles and Santa Barbara. That is where I meet my little sister from another mister, that would be Sylvia Moyer, where I end up meeting Sylvia at my first California Police Chiefs Conference, and her graciousness was astounding. I walk in a room of chiefs. I'm a brand new chief. I'm not even from California. Sylvia took me by the hand and began introducing me to people, and Balin told me to get involved in the Cal Chiefs Association. So for that, I will forever love you, Sylvia. Thank you for that. Took a stab after being a police chief in Oxnard for 5.5 years to come back to my hometown to be the first female chief here. I was the first female chief in Oxnard also. And it's been challenging to say the least. I'm certain we're going to get involved in a lot of conversations. Sylvia and I could sit around the table probably for the next 2 days and tell you about all the different things that have happened as far as leadership. But at the end of the day, I know for certain I can say this, our hearts, our soul, our passion is into really trying to make this profession better. If we can make policing better, we make the world a better place. And you're looking at folks who've been committed to that. So blessed and fortunate to be here. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Chief, for that, again, that testimony of your policing experiences. So Assistant Director Nunez, you are probably one of the most highest ranking female law enforcement officers in the federal service. Could you tell us about your career with ATF and all the different parts of the country that you've served?
Absolutely. First and foremost, I want to thank John Jay College of Criminal Justice and alumni for inviting me to be part of this esteemed panel. And I'm honored and humbled to share this virtual stage with these ladies. I started my career with ATF in 1998 as an intern. But my passion for law enforcement actually grew in 1983 when I was 8 years old, and my family became a victim of gang violence in the city of Chicago. That's when I first encountered a Chicago police officer, and I'll never forget him walking up to our door to give us the devastating news. And that's when I absolutely knew I wanted to be in law enforcement. My passion grew there. It never stopped. In 1998, I became an intern for ATF and fell in love with the mission and the agency. It's a small agency within the Department of Justice with a very big mission of combating gun violence and gang violence. And that's exactly what I knew I wanted to do. I interned at the time when we had the first female special agent in charge in the Chicago Field Division, Dr. Kathleen Kiernan, who really took me by the hand and guided my career and has been a mentor till this day. I still text her. In fact, I text her to make sure I sent her the flyer to make sure she logged on to this. But in 1999, I eventually transferred over from an intern to a special agent, and I had a great honor to serve as a special agent. And not only that, but also being stationed in Chicago, which was my home city. I started off in a gun trafficking group. I did gun cases, gang cases. I did undercover. And then eventually in 2005, the opportunity came for me to transfer to Puerto Rico. I was born and raised in Chicago. I come from Puerto Rican parents, and I figured it was a great opportunity for me to kind of learn my culture and see the agency through different lens. So I transferred to Puerto Rico, and was doing, felt like this was, I had the world by the hand. I loved the work that was being done there. I was learning my culture. 2009, I got a call and a little nudge to say, hey, you have to put in for supervision. I did. I promoted to resident agent in charge of the violent crime unit in San Juan in the Caribbean islands. Loved my job there. Then it was time for me to leave the island after 7 years, and decided to come to headquarters and see how the sausage is made here in headquarters, and see how exactly the programs that affect the field work. And so I came as a branch chief, and I oversaw some of the really great programs in our agency, which is our victim witness, our visa, our WICSEC program, our special events program. Did that for a short period of time, and then obviously promoted, got another nudge and said, hey, it's time for you to put in for deputy chief. Put in for the deputy chief over at the Department of Justice to oversee the emergency support functions for emergency support, and it's something completely different than law enforcement. I didn't want to go into that and leaving the law enforcement field, but I figured it was something new for me. I had the great privilege of serving at the committee for the Attorney General Emergency Preparedness Plan Committee, and learned a lot about emergency management there. And then obviously my director at the time, B. Todd Jones, would see me in the atrium all the time and say, hey, I think it's time for you to go back out to the field. We need you back out in the field. So I figured, I did Central, I did East, so let me go West. Like, it's great coffee out in Seattle, and I heard great hiking, so let me go out to Seattle. Went out to Seattle, and immediately during my tenure there, I reported to responded to 3 mass shootings and 3 agent-involved shooting incidents. Learned a lot about leadership there and crisis management, and that's where I actually met the wonderful Chief O'Toole. I had the great opportunity to work with her. I remember the first day I walked in her office and I said, Chief, I want to open up a crime gun intelligence center here in your city, and I need your help. And without hesitation, she says, what do you need? I'll give you whatever you want. And true to word, she gave me exactly what I needed. And we were very successful with a very short period of time. Her and I were there. But in 2017, I had the opportunity to put in for the special agent in charge of the Chicago Field Division, which was my home city. And I figured, how wonderful would it be for my whole entire career to come in full circle and have the opportunity to come back home and run the Special Operations Division, our enforcement operations in Chicago and our regulatory side as well. Threw my name in the hat. I knew a lot of people were putting in for it, but I figured this is the time. It's 2017. Chicago was on center stage for being the most violent city in America. And I wanted to be there. I wanted to be there helping my community. And so threw my name in the hat. I know the Chicago Cubs, my dear Chicago Cubs, were in the World Series. So I said, this is great. Karma, I'm going to go ahead and put in. And I did. And I got a phone call from my director naming me the special agent in charge of the Chicago Field Division. And I thought I was on top of the world, but 2 days later, my Chicago Cubs won the World Series. And so I knew I should have bought a lotto ticket then, and I didn't, but life was great. But I remember right before reporting to Chicago, I had lunch with Chief O'Toole and Carmen Best. And I said, Chief, what advice can you possibly give me before I head to this challenging city? And I remember her words. She said, Salinas, always be transparent, be confident when you're right, and never, ever let them see you sweat. And that really, really got me through a lot of tough times in Chicago. I have to say, I had 2 agents shot in the line of duty. And I remember right before going on to that press conference, thinking of those words, Chief, and it really got me through, and I appreciate that. 2019, I'm sitting at the NICU hospital. My wife had just delivered our twin babies, and I get a phone call from my director saying, congratulations, you are now the assistant director of our Office of Professional Responsibility and Chief Security Officer. It was bittersweet. It's a huge promotion, but obviously I was leaving my safety net and I was leaving my home city, where I think we were doing some great progress there. But I accepted the challenge and I came to headquarters, and I'm currently here. I oversee our completely different than from law enforcement. I now protect the agency's physical security, our information security, and our personnel security, which is all of our background investigations in our internal affairs division as well, and our force review office as well. And that's my whole career in a nutshell.
Good, thanks, A.D. Nunez. Welcome back to Washington. I know it's not the beautiful island of Puerto Rico, but it'll have to make do. So, yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you hear these wonderful testimonies, there's no one way to move into law enforcement and to advance. But one of the things that sort of resonated with me was the bond that shared in law enforcement. As you travel throughout the country, whether you're in Washington or Seattle or Phoenix or Tempe, Arizona, or even Boston, there's this bond that develops among law enforcement officers. And as you heard from these ladies speaking, it's that bond that continues to go no matter where they're stationed. So thank you for that, ladies. So I know all of you have, are college graduates and, have a college career behind you. So one of the important things to our audience today and a lot of our students is the college requirements for law enforcement officers. As you know, it varies across, we have 18,000 law enforcement agencies throughout the country. That varies. Sometimes you have a 4-year degree requirement, sometimes a 2-year degree. Sometimes there's a combination of maybe military experience and a college degree. So give me your thoughts, if you will, please, and share with the audience your thoughts on the importance of having a college education. And two-part question. And is there one particular major that if you're looking to go into law enforcement, you can consider? And Chief Williams, I'm going to sort of put you on the spot because I know you have a master's degree in education. So, and you obviously you're a chief, not once, but twice, and you did not have a criminal justice background. But why don't you tell us a little bit about some of your thoughts on college education?
So thank you for that question. And remember, I'm a fine arts or theater major, so I'm all over the place, right? So I would suggest that if you do want to become a police officer, it is helpful and beneficial for you to have a college degree. It doesn't matter what the field is, but what college does, in my opinion, is it exposes you to others who are not like yourself, which then creates an enriched person where you're able to deal with, communicate, manage, come in contact with others who are not like yourself. My agency does not require a degree, but that's always been my statement and my comment is if you come in with that degree, then you're able to test for supervisor because we need leaders in our organization who look like the ladies that are on this panel so that you're able to test for supervisor. So just get a college degree, show that you're tenacious, show that you can finish something because any employer is looking for that. Thank you.
Chief O'Toole, not only do you have your college degree, but also a law degree. Have you found that to be helpful in your career in law enforcement? And is that something that folks should consider as being a police officer?
Well, I think I think education is really important. And by the way, I mean, I have lots of police officers who are friends of mine, family members who haven't had the opportunity to attend college, and some of them are phenomenal police officers. But I absolutely believe, as Chief Williams indicated, that it really does broaden your horizons. I think, and going to law school was an incredible experience because it really forced me to think outside of the box. I mean, when you go to law school, you have to look at issues from every imaginable perspective because you have to be able to eventually argue on behalf of your clients, and your clients may not represent the same philosophical beliefs that you have, or you may not necessarily agree with your client's position, but you have to advocate for them. So you really have to look at issues from every imaginable perspective. And once I became a leader in policing, I realized that I also had to look at issues from every imaginable perspective. And so that law school experience was incredible for me. I also went on, if you can believe it, when I was in my 50s, when I decided to go to business school, and I was working over in Ireland at the time and enrolled in the part-time PhD program at Trinity College in Dublin. And that was a remarkable experience. I was considerably older than most of the other participants, and it was phenomenal. I really enjoyed that engagement, and again that thirst for knowledge. I'm just always, and my dad was a school teacher, always emphasized the importance of education, and I think it's wonderful if we have a genuine thirst for knowledge, because we're able to explore things that go beyond our daily routine. So I would absolutely advocate for as much education as possible. I think a criminal justice degree is wonderful, but as a police chief, I hired lots of people with criminal justice degrees, but I hired people who had very diverse experience as well. When I was in Seattle, I established my command staff. I had 4 JDs, 4 PhDs, an engineer. I mean, people that represented very, very diverse educational backgrounds. And I think that really served us well, because we, again, brought diversity of thought and experience to the table. And it worked well for our organization.
Good. Thank you, Chief. Chief Moyer, your background in education is in criminal justice. So how has that served you, and what's your thoughts on education and policing?
Sure, my undergrad is in criminal justice, as you said, Bray. And then what I realized is I needed to diversify my thinking, just like has been offered by the other panelists. My first master's degree is in organizational management. My second is from the Naval Postgraduate School, Center for Homeland Defense and Security. I am one of those people that is considered ABD, all but dissertation. I was doing my PhD when I became a chief, and that was just crazy. I was unable to complete my PhD. I chose a practitioner path. I will say this, Bray, that my core way of being has been ancora imparo. Michelangelo was known to have said ancora imparo. I am still learning. At 83 years old, and he had accomplished so much, he said that. I say ancora imparo consistently, that I am still learning. My thirst for learning, my thirst for expanding my thought, really solidifying and strengthening my critical thinking skills is important. I say to anybody that's on this call, really, and on this web, I would say really engage in continuing your education. Bloom's taxonomy says the higher order thinking, the analysis, synthesis, evaluation, that is really what managers and executives engage in, that kind of higher order thinking. We have the basis of knowledge, but then we really engage fully in that higher order thinking. I would say that degrees are essential to show not only that you have the aptitude, but the attitude and the tenacity to do the work. So I encourage everyone to continue learning and continue to feed that thirst for learning.
Chief, you didn't mention it during your introduction in your bio, but one of the things I noticed that I thought was really cool, and the fact that you went to the training school with the Old Guard. For those of you who don't know, the Old Guard is a very elite group in the United States Army, and they have the privilege of guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier. And it's very difficult training. And I know this is off the topic of college education, but Chief, will you just mention a little bit and talk a little bit about that experience?
Bray, I'd love to talk about it. I could talk about it forever. We sought out that training with the elite unit, the Old Guard, because we wanted to fine tune our SOPs for how we engage in the presentation of colors and honoring those that have been killed in the line of duty. And that really, if anything came out of that, it was the discipline, the respect, and how we stand in bearing and tact and discipline for something bigger than ourselves. And while, yes, it was skill building, it was bigger than that. It was soul fulfilling. And it really had significant meaning for me just to be in the presence of these remarkable men and women was remarkable. And I look back on that as one of the real turning points in not only my career, but in solidifying the meaning and character building that was absolutely necessary for me. Thanks for asking about that.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. I really appreciate you sharing that. I got a warm spot in my heart for those folks.
Ooh.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
AD Nunez, college education at the federal level. So oftentimes I used to be asked about how do I become an 1811 or a special agent? What's my career path? Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences and college education and serving in the federal government?
Absolutely. College education is extremely important at the federal level. You are competing with a lot of great candidates that are coming in not only with bachelor's degrees, but now with master's degrees and PhD as well. And law enforcement agencies, we're always trying to recruit the cream of the cream, the top best candidates out there. And so an education is extremely important. Now, that being said, our agency, you don't have to have a bachelor's degree. If you have 10 years of detective experience, a law enforcement experience, we will take that over a degree. We've had many great candidates in our agency that don't have a bachelor's degree and probably are one of the best investigators we have, but they came from the state and local departments with that already. I would say that education experience that you can't get in an institution, you get it from being working the streets and working the beat. So that's how we have our diverse work group here in our agency, is from all walks of life. People with bachelor's degrees, master's degrees. I have to say, what major is more important? I believe I didn't have prior law enforcement experience. So having that foundation of criminal justice degree really helped me out, at least to understand the history of criminal justice, to understand what was happening in our society and law enforcement. And then obviously the fundamental issues of just basic lingo of law enforcement really helps me have that degree. But again, I work with a lot of people in our agency that don't hold a criminal justice degree. I believe education really helps you become a strategic thinker, helps you puts you in an environment with diverse people. It forces you to work in projects with people and really come up with solutions. Those are things you can't get outside an educational institution. So education is extremely important.
Good, thank you, AD Nunez. Ladies, as you know, oftentimes when we talk about education, especially my experiences when I went to John Jay, I selected John Jay particularly because it was a criminal justice school. There was a number of other schools that I could have attended at the time, and I actually crossed the Hudson River and went into New York City from Jersey and went to school there. But I had the great privilege of having a lot of professors that actually wrote the books and were the leaders at that time in various aspects of criminal justice. But throughout my career, not only in law enforcement, but elsewhere, I found out there's a lot of other skills. And I especially see that, I guess, in law enforcement that are so important. It's good to know about the history of policing and corrections and all of those other things that were taught for a criminal justice degree. But additionally, there's some other soft skills. And AD Nunez, I'm going to kick it back to you for two reasons. One of which is I asked you before we spoke, and the reason is second language. How important has that been to you? And secondly, you also serve as the Chief Security Officer for ATF, which is another type of skill that's becoming so very important now with cyber and so forth. Can you speak a little bit to that, please?
Absolutely. You know, it's extremely important, obviously, being the Chief Security Officer for our agency. It's obviously protecting the information, completely different than the law enforcement world. I had to come in here. I came here in April of 2019, and I had to learn the Chief Security Officer role. But protecting our information, our physical, our personnel security, and our physical infrastructure is extremely important. Can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry. Did you say the soft skills?
Yeah, I mean, some of the other skills that, like you said, you know, you found the second language to be very important. Some of the other skills that you might think
yes,
of.
listen, throughout my whole entire career, being able to serve the communities you serve, and having that trust, if you can speak their language, that is extremely, extremely important. I've been able to do undercover, being able to speak Spanish, working in the wire room, translating, speaking Spanish. That all is extremely important when it comes to law enforcement. Taking a phone call from somebody that calls in and wants to give you an anonymous tip and they only speak Spanish. I was a hostage negotiator for our agency for a short period of time. Being able to speak that second language when you're dealing with the crisis situation is extremely important. You know, in our country right now, Spanish is the second leading language. And so having that second language is extremely beneficial for our agency and for a lot of federal law enforcement agencies, and I'm sure for state and local law enforcement as well. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that.
Good, thank you. Ladies, I'll open it up. Maybe Chief Williams, I know all of you have been in front of a mic and have done press conferences. Some are probably more challenging than others. Chief Williams, your thoughts on communication and public speaking as another course that people may consider while they're in college?
So some would say I get it right in front of the media. Some would say that I mess up, and boy, when I mess up big, and it's usually monumental. Definitely the public speaking skills are critically important. The ability to stay on task with your messaging is critically important in spite of what questions come your way. But the communication piece, being very comfortable in your own skin, having a lot of confidence, are all those skills we need. And just the sheer ability to, and this is going to sound really cliche, I think, the ability to connect with people. Oftentimes when you see a police chief or you see a SAC or a special agent in charge, you see the suit, right? You don't get to see the personality. The world is craving personality. They're craving your genuine self, and to thine own self be true. So if you are comfortable in your own skin and you have that kind of confidence, that transcends and speaks to people and makes you far more approachable. So, and I don't necessarily want to call communication soft skills, if you will. I think it's just general skills we all need to have to be successful. So you can use that communication skill as a special agent. You can use a communication skill doing anything with John Jay College, but the ability to speak in front of others and be comfortable and confident in that is critically important, especially for chiefs.
Good. Chief O'Toole or Chief Moyer, your thoughts?
Well, maybe I'll jump in here, Bray, because I think there's an important point to be made. You know, when I first started at the police academy, we were taught to go out and fight the war on crime. And, you know, it was exciting and we trained to do it. And I went out and I did all kinds of law enforcement work and I worked as a decoy. And, you know, it was exhilarating. You know, it was a great adrenaline rush. But I also discovered that that's only a small percentage of police work. In fact, I saw a study recently that indicated that only 5% of police work in the US focuses on violent crime, that less than 15% of police work across this country involves law enforcement, meaning that the majority of police work is providing service to people in need, to vulnerable people. Yet we received for years so little training in those areas. In Seattle, for instance, we weren't even tracking the work we were doing other than crime fighting. And we decided to start capturing data on other areas of our responsibilities. And we determined, for instance, that Seattle police were responding to calls about 10,000 times a year to service people, to respond to people who were in serious mental health crisis. And in 8% of cases, those people were armed and a potential danger to themselves and others. So the police still had to be there. You couldn't just hand that work to other people. But I think it's really important that we in policing now recognize the need to attract people who have training and education that goes beyond law enforcement, and that we also provide training in things like de-escalation, dealing with people in mental health crisis, dealing with people who are vulnerable with addiction conditions and people who are homeless, because in reality, that's the majority of work police are doing. And I'm going to predict that going forward, we're going to engage in more multidisciplinary approaches. I mean, all of us here have worked in partnership with people, with other government organizations, other NGOs, other private sector organizations on complicated issues. And I think that that's where policing is headed in the future, harnessing our resources rather than working on parallel tracks. But I think it's really important that we recognize what police really do. And people watch television today and they think it's all about the gunfights, or it's all about, the action films. And reality, it goes well beyond that. So I think we need to tell our story better, and we need to build our education and our recruitment around that story.
Excellent, excellent comments. Thank you, Chief. Just going to move on. We have a few more questions, and then we're going to be opening it up to some questions from the folks on the webinar. So some of the biggest challenges that you have faced. Now, I know three of you as chiefs, I'm assuming that each one of you were the first chief, female chief in your particular department. You've dealt with, some issues. I know Chief Moyer, Chief Williams, you have mayors there, some young mayors for the first time that they're coming in as mayor, and some diversity there. So some of the challenge that you had, maybe some of the administrative interactions that you've had, and I'll open it up to whoever wants to start that you see as in your role as a chief.
So it looks like Jerry's going to defer to me. We're going by height, apparently. Shortest to tallest this time. I can say, without speaking specifically, I think it's really important for folks to grasp that leadership takes the capacity to stomach hostility. It really takes that capacity so that we can stay connected with people, people can stay connected with us. This year is no doubt unprecedented. There has been no year like this where executives have had so many multiple crises simultaneously laid at our feet. With COVID, with civil unrest, with the hostility toward police, the reform work that is being called for quite necessarily, with moments of reckoning in communities that have been underserved, with budget reductions. Murder hornets didn't even make the news for more than a day, which was astonishing. Any other year, they would have been a real story. But I think the real thing for all of us to grasp, and Bray, it takes me right back to what I learned with the old guard, is to stay present for what is unfolding, so that I do not become the issue. I don't take personal attacks personally. I see the distinction between self and role as essential. And the hostility that was coming at me from wherever, I saw it coming at my role as a chief. And that gave me a real ability to stay present, to increase my capacity for taking the heat, and to really remain able to connect with people. In fact, I'll just briefly say this. I had protesters for the last 2 years putting my personal home address out online. They were spray painting my home address out in the street. They had signs and things, go to Chief Moyer's house and broadcast my address. And that was really disquieting. It was scary. After quite some time, I met with one of those protesters, and she said, well, when we were screaming at you, telling you we hated you, and for hours and hours, what were you thinking? And I told her, I said, I was thinking that I wish you peace for your soul, because I'm a peacekeeper. And I hope that that kept me present, kept me able to really continue to connect with people and act at the strategy and policy level, but also really dive into understanding our operations and the array of things that are laid at Chief's feet. So I think that was a bit of a big answer, but I think it does really generate some thought for some folks and some intention that will supplement the great education that folks are getting here at John Jay. So Jerry, I'll mute and turn it right over to you.
So yes, Sylvia, we were going by height. Short one goes first. We're just so totes adorbs. On the whole concept of being that constant person in spite of all the wind and noise around you. If the police chief goes down and loses it, then the entire department loses it. So when I stand, I am standing because I have 4,000 people who are following, and then you multiply that by having 1.7 million people looking at you to see what your reactions are going to be. And oftentimes, and Sylvia, and I'm sure Kathleen can attest to this too, when you're sitting in council and the comments and the statements, I mean, we sat in a church last year, I think it was last year, where thousands of people, including CNN, were hurling comments at me. And I am literally on my pad, either writing scripture or writing verses, because you can't meet that emotional and mental guide with meanness. You can't meet it with evilness. You can't meet it with hate. You can only meet it with love and knowing that you are the consummate professional. And in spite of the noise, in spite of the politics, in spite of all the bad things that are going to happen to you as a police chief, you must stand firm on your beliefs, on your integrity, on your faith, or whatever works for you. So you have to be that constant person. And the last thing I want to those folks listening is for someone to say, well, she's the girl chief and this was her reaction. Because I still think we need to mitigate our way through that. So stay focused, stay connected, stay true to your core. And when people say bad things about you, write or draw things on a pad that are positive, and you can stay positive. Thanks, Sylvia.
Good. Thank you, ladies. I'm going to move on to two other questions that I'd like to raise. It sort of dovetails into one of the questions that we had from one of our listeners. Women have become so important in law enforcement today. I opened it up. Tell me about the importance of women in law enforcement, and why do we need to make sure that we have that diversity in law enforcement today? That's the first part. And then how can we better have women make sure that they're accepted? Obviously, each and every one of you came through a time when it was very challenging to get where you are today. So if you could just speak to some of that, some of those challenges, and why do we need women in law enforcement today? Chief Williams, I see you've given me the thumbs up, so I'll let you go first. We're going to go from tallest to shortest this time.
I am the tall one. So I would definitely say we need us, because we want to mirror our communities. It's easier sometimes for a victim or a witness to come and speak with someone who looks just like her. And I do believe we bring a unique skill set. We're oftentimes able to listen better. I can't overpower people, so I'm going to talk my way through things. So we need those skill sets. And Sac Nunez talked about emotional intelligence. We definitely need that emotional intelligence too. So we absolutely need more women. Thank you.
Chief O'Toole, I'll move it over to you.
Well, I truly believe, Bray, that a police service needs to represent the community it serves in every respect in order to be credible. People need to look at the police and understand that they're a part of the community, not apart from the community. And again, I think that, while we all have our individual personalities and characteristics, that it's really important to have that diversity, including gender diversity. But I'd also say that I wouldn't, what you were talking earlier about obstacles we may have faced in our careers, I wouldn't be where I am today, but for the incredible support that I had from my male colleagues too. Bill Bratton, former New York Police Commissioner, was my first mentor. I was only 32 years old when he tapped me on the shoulder and asked me to be part of his command team. Fortunately, I didn't know what I didn't know at the time, but he was just an extraordinary mentor. Jerry referred earlier to, Selena's referred earlier to people like Kathleen Kiernan. I know Dr. Kathleen Kiernan is on this call because she texted me, sent me a message, and she's an extraordinary role model to so many young women in the business. She'd be of my generation, but we kind of rose through the ranks of federal and local law enforcement at the same time, and we crossed paths on a regular basis, and we drew strength from each other. I didn't face a lot of the obstacles that many of my colleagues faced along the way. I was very fortunate that I had great support systems from my mentors and my colleagues. But, I think it was really rough. And I think that going forward, I mean, policing is a messy business and it's a challenging business. And it can really take a toll on people. We're finally realizing the importance of officer wellness and providing the support we need to people in our business. But I think we need to find strength in each other. And I think, as women and as men, I mean, there are many, as I say, many male colleagues who have provided me that type of support over the years too. We need to support each other because it's a tough career, but it's such a rewarding career at the same time.
Good, thank you, Chief. AD Nunez, number of ladies have risen to some of the top levels in federal law enforcement. Your thoughts why we need folks folks like that, like yourself and the Julie Pearson from Secret Service and former director of her name slips me right now, former director of ATF. Why is it so important to have women at the federal law enforcement level as well? Why do we need that?
First and foremost, women are phenomenal communicators. Let's take that into consideration. And we don't have a lot of women in federal law enforcement. And I think it's primarily because of the mobility agreement that we have to sign and that you have to be able to be mobile. And it's hard to constantly move your family all around the country. If you look at our numbers in the federal government right now, women is a very, very small percentage in federal law enforcement. In our agency right now, we're at 15% of women within our ranks in the special agent arena. And so we are definitely need more federal women in law enforcement. But we see things through a different lens than men do. And just like Kathy said, I wouldn't be in the position I am today if it weren't for a lot of my male colleagues that pushed me along the way. But a lot of my mentors that I had, like Dr. Kathleen Kiernan, and Chief O'Toole doesn't know she's my mentor, but she is, because I always looking up to her, and then a lot of other women in the state and local that I look up to. We need more women in federal law enforcement. Unfortunately, we just don't have the numbers. Listen, I'm the mother of 21-month-old twins, a boy and a girl. And my daughter is the phenomenal communicator right now, 21-month-old. And my doctor says women are phenomenal communicators. And I think that's what law enforcement needs right now.
Thank you for that. Yes, my wife reminds me of that all the time, that you folks are very good communicators and we are challenged not to be so much so. But let's wrap up on a question on a high note, and then we'll open up to some more questions from those who are on the webinar. Let's talk about some of the biggest rewards that you've had in law enforcement. We've talked about your challenges. We've talked about your careers in getting there and some of the challenges that you faced in getting there. So let's tell me about some of the highlights of your career. And I think I could probably read a lot of it already. We've talked about the camaraderie, and certainly if nothing else came across, you've all been excellent, is the bonding and the wonderful friendships that you all have formed over the years. So Chief Moyer, I see that you're up there, so I'll let you go first. Chief, we're going to start with the shortest of fun time, Chief.
Thanks. And I'll say, I think we could tell your wife you're doing a great job in the communication space here. Really remarkable. Really, there are so many rewards. And at the end of the day, it is about how people have felt in our presence. Every single one of us has advanced strategy and policy. We have built stations. We have done things in local policing and state policing and federally, but really it is about the pocket type of engagements where we have been there for someone. We have safeguarded someone. It is some moment in time where we have demonstrated the very best of our compassion, our empathy, and safeguarding people. And those are the things that don't make the paper. It is, there's no news there. It is helping someone in the community in their greatest time of need, or it is advancing another woman in policing. Jerry Williams and I talk about this a lot. We say, save a seat for a sister. that we have a responsibility as women to lift up other women. We have a responsibility to lift up men, to connect with people, to enrich their careers. And I would say the rewards are those encounters where we have really seen that we have made a difference in the life of another person.
Bray, you're muted.
I'm sorry.
Right after I give him the compliment about being a communicator, Bray.
Well, I didn't say I wasn't technically challenged, it's. So, Chief Williams, your thoughts, some of the good experiences that you've had in policing?
So to actually be in the seat at this moment in time is pivotal, because we are actually making a difference in policing, period. It's been awful, it's been horrendous, it's been challenging, but we're all in this space for such a time as this to make a change and a difference. Secondly, for me, I've been able to travel the world for the love of Pete because of this profession. So I've been blessed and enriched to meet so many amazing people who are way smarter than I am. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Chief O'Toole?
Yeah, Bray, it's a really good question. And I'll say this, if I could go back to roll call as a young police officer in District 1 tonight, I would do it in a heartbeat. I mean, I loved being a beat cop, I was, as I say, we were trained to go out and fight the war on crime. And I loved that adrenaline rush. But boy, I didn't realize I'd have the opportunity to, save some lives and deliver a few babies and, be there for people who were really in need. And that's incredibly humbling. And I can't describe the personal reward in all of that. I just think that, as I said before, to me, it wasn't just a job, it was truly a vocation. And I just feel so blessed that I found that vocation along the way.
Good. Thank you, Chief. A.D. Nunez?
For me, I would have to say is giving back, being able to be in a position to give back to those and that put me in a position, and it gave me the opportunity to be where I'm at today, and just now giving others that opportunity. For me, it's just a highlight of my career. And not only that, but folks that work for me as well, is pushing them just like I was pushed into supervision. I'm pushing my people out the door, even though they're my best workers and it's going to hurt me tremendously. I don't want you here. I want you to promote, and just being able to see those people promote and move up in the agency is the highlight of my career.
Good. Thank you, ladies. We did get one question in, and I'll open it up to whoever would like to take this question. And I know the answer, but I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. Have you ever been undermined in your role as a chief or assistant director? Have you been undermined? I see Chief Moyer shaking her head. Yes. Chief Williams, you got your finger up? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I have. However, I don't choose to dwell on it. So I will never be the victim in anything. If you choose to undermine me, that's up to you. At the end of the day, I'm still the chief. At the end of the day, I still have 4 stars. And at the end of the day, I'm going to make decisions that I know are true decisions because my heart, my soul, my passion is into this. So for anyone who's been undermined, every single woman on this Zoom could tell you that. Heck, Bray, you've probably been undermined too. But instead of dwelling on it, be forward focused and keep moving forward would be my suggestion. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, and I'll just put a little note on that I just changed my Twitter profile because I'm officially retired as of Sunday, that I'm currently out of the office traveling the high road. And I really believe we have options. Between stimulus and response lies choice, per Viktor Frankl. And that's where our freedom lies. And all the stimulus of undermining, we choose our response. And I have seen time and time again where we don't forget, but we choose to travel the high road and continue to act with integrity and character and demonstrate our values repeatedly. And I've seen it over and over, and we've seen the consequences of those that choose something very different.
Good. Thank you, Chief.
You bet.
Another question we have coming in is, do you feel that women are still being undermined in law enforcement? And if so, how do you deal with that? Who would like to take that one? I'm sorry, I can't answer that one, so I have to leave it to the panelists, ladies. It's up to you.
Bray, that one was already answered. It's the
Oh,
next
did you?
one. Yes,
Okay, what's our next one, Roseanne? Sorry.
that's okay. Do you feel like there is a stigma against women in law enforcement that might discourage more women from going into this line of work? How would you combat that?
Well, I'll take that one. I mean, I think unfortunately there's a stigma against law enforcement generally right now, and it really breaks my heart. I mean, again, we have to, rise above it and just continue to move forward and work hard to build and rebuild community trust, because we can't succeed as police unless we have the trust, the faith of the community. And I can understand why in many instances trust has been shaken. I mean, that's totally understandable, but I don't think I think the stigma against police generally is more of a problem now, than the stigma against women in policing.
Thank you. The next question we have is, have you dealt with setbacks in your career, whether it was a mistake that you may have made or an unfortunate circumstance? Who would like to take that one?
Not dwell on it.
Excellent.
So definitely what the SAC just said, just take that mistake as an opportunity to grow and not make that same mistake again, because I would rather make the mistake and learn from it than to sit back and not do anything because I'm, petrified of making mistakes. We've all made them. When you make the mistake, you own the mistake, you learn from it, not dwell on it, and move on.
And I use meditation and mindfulness about grounding myself to where I am so I can just be fully present with what's unfolding. I acknowledge it, the mistake. I learn from it. I write it down in my book that is my reflective opportunity. I don't forget it, but I also don't dwell on it. You move on, suck it up and drive on.
There you go.
As managers, as leaders, Bray, we've had to not only take responsibility for our own mistakes, but for our organization's mistakes as well. And I've always said, and I learned this lesson from my mentors, stand up, tell the truth, take responsibility, and if appropriate, apologize and be completely authentic about it. And I think that, people genuinely appreciate that.
Good. Thank you, Chief. How do you juggle your family and spouses with your careers? All right, Chief Williams, you look excited about answering that question, so I'll let you go first, ma'am.
Yeah, because people used to joke with me about work-life balance, my eyeballs, right? So you juggle it by picking the right person to be connected with. You juggle it by having support. You juggle it by asking for help. You juggle it by realizing that although my house may not be the cleanest house, no one is sick and nobody's bleeding and everything's going to be okay, even if the laundry is not done at this very moment. So give yourself a little bit of grace, ask for a little bit of help, and things will work out in your favor if you're willing to work for it.
Good. Anyone else?
Well, I'll just add, my husband always uses the line that when he wants to hide something on me, he puts it in the oven. So, I obviously haven't been much of a domestic goddess, but I think the fact that I was married to a police officer probably helped a bit because he understood the challenges. He often also said that it's a good thing I didn't marry a banker, or it never would have lasted. So, I think that Jerry's absolutely right. We need to find partners who will understand and support us. And boy, I'll tell you, my family, not just my husband, but my daughter too, have been there every step of the way for me. Without their support, I certainly wouldn't be where I am today.
Absolutely.
Right. And I would say you have to, first of all, acknowledge that work-life balance is a hallucination. It doesn't exist on this planet, so let that go. And then really increase your capacity for disappointing people. Increase your capacity for disappointing yourself, because the women on this panel, we have multiple things that are occurring all simultaneously, and we want to be all things to all people. And typically we disappoint someone and we always disappoint ourselves. So I say, give yourself some grace and and just make the best choices and don't live in shame. And I want to hear from AD Nunez. You have kids, small kids. How old are your
Yeah,
children?
well, they're 21-month-old, hence why I have bags under my eyes. I don't sleep. So sleep does not happen in my house. They're up at 4 a.m. So yeah, very difficult, but you're right. Work-home balance is very difficult right now. But I think the key is also letting go of a lot of things, trusting your team to make decisions. That's why they're there. I always say I have to be the dumbest person in the room. I want to be surrounded by very smart people. I put very smart people in very key positions because I have to trust them to make those decisions for me because I can't make them all the time. I physically cannot make them all the time. And then that's what's getting me through these tough times right now.
And of course, being in Washington is so much fun too. It's just like being in Puerto Rico, right?
Exactly.
We do have a question. I don't know if this statistic is accurate, but it says women only make up about 12% of the policing nationally. And why don't you think that's higher? And what can we do to encourage other female applicants? Who would like to take that one?
I think we need to tell the real story of policing so people understand what it's all about. And when I worked over in Ireland as the chief inspector of the Garda Síochána, it was amazing to me that women made up a much larger percentage of the organization. I think during the period I was there, I saw the classes increase. You know, it was from 25 to 32 to 40%. I mean, it was amazing that many more women were taking up the police work at the time. Of course, that's an organization that has a long-standing commitment to the community and a lot of community support. And it's a routinely unarmed police service as well. So, you know, each jurisdiction has its unique characteristics, but I think we need to do a much better job, as I said earlier, of telling our story so police understand so potential candidates understand what policing is all about and how it can be so personally rewarding as a profession.
We have a question here that it's a topic that we have not yet talked about, but clearly very much a part of policing. Young lady's interested in going into law enforcement, and she's talking about the physical fitness aspect of it. She was told to do a lot of running. Now, I know that we've adjusted some of the physical fitness tests, not only in law enforcement, I know it's also in the military as well now. Would anybody like to address how to best prepare yourself? We've talked a little bit about maybe mentally, but also about physically. What would you recommend to somebody going into police work today?
So this is Chief Williams. So the job is physical. There is no way to get around it. You're sitting in a car, you get out of a car, you have to run and you have to chase people. So don't minimize the physicality of the job. But if anybody can get through a police academy, and I got through it, you can do it too. So you need to set your goals. You need to get a great nutrition plan. And you definitely need to develop dynamic strength too, because you're going to need all of that in order to be a police officer. I know Chief Moyer is a marathon distance runner. So she is definitely built for speed. So she could probably.
Chief Moyer, would you like to respond to that?
Well, I agree. You need not only physical strength, but you need explosive strength. You need endurance. Something that I think is remarkable is when I left California and came to Arizona, I was required as a police chief to take the physical agility test again. And I wasn't worried. I wasn't worried because I had maintained a base level of fitness with a routine, habituating some of the things that were important. And I would encourage the person that asked this question to get a trainer to talk about the underlying job tasks for the job and to work toward the physical elements that will make this candidate successful. I wasn't worried because I had the techniques to go over a wall and I'm kind of springy, but I'm small, I'm 5'4", but it wasn't a problem to pass the test because I had committed to continuing the physical abilities. I'm not crazy about it, but I did continue with a base. Here's one thing that I would also add is that I underestimated a decade of being a police chief. I underestimated how much physical mental, spiritual, and emotional endurance was necessary to do the job and to remain connected with people internally and externally. And physical fitness and having a whole routine really serves that. So I would encourage this candidate to identify a good trainer and to really have a broad approach to how they train for the rigors of the work and commit to it throughout your life.
Good. Thank you, Chief.
Sure.
Yeah. Obviously, you have to be well-rounded all the way. I mean, you ladies clearly have spoken to that very much so. So here's a question. How should a young woman dress during the hiring process? I've been told to dress professionally, hair pulled back, no jewelry. And this came from senior male law enforcement officers. So who would like to make a comment on the fashion statement and how to dress for the job?
Look like A.D. Nunez. Just saying. And really, I think being conservative and to dress within your own style, understanding the role that you're attempting to fill is really important. And I would say this, I made this mistake once, always have a timepiece and a pen somewhere.
There you go. A.D. Nunez, since you've been singled out as the fashion plate on the panel here, would you like to respond to that?
No, I agree. It's definitely dress for the position you're applying for. If you're applying to be in law enforcement, if you're applying to be a special agent, dress accordingly. Don't wear the open toes, high heels, looks like you're going to a nightclub. Short skirt, all that stuff. Just dress professional, and you should be fine.
Thank you. Chief Williams, thumbs are up. Everything, we're good? Any comments, ma'am? All right, we're good. I see that we're over here, Roseanne. I got about 17 after 7. I know for Chief Williams, this is still the working hours. Us here on the East Coast have concluded, but I know that that's still part of her workday. Do we want to take any one or two more questions, Roseanne, or what's your pleasure?
If that's okay with the panelists, I know, like you said, some of them are in a different time zone. So
Okay.
yes, Bray, use your judgment, take one or two more as you see fit.
All right, why don't we take one or two more? One of the questions, obviously, let's talk about the elephant in the room. What do you think about the wave now throughout the country about defunding police? Who would like to address that issue on some of your thoughts regarding the defunding?
I'll take a shot at that one, Bray. I think the defunding, it's more of a slogan than anything else. And, I hope that there are really thoughtful conversations in jurisdictions about the role of the police and how we can work in more constructive relationships with others in our communities to tackle some of the complicated challenges we have, especially those challenges at the intersection of public health and public safety. But, to defund the police, and without any thought, I think is really dangerous. And, who will be there to respond to those vulnerable people in the middle of the night when the 911 call comes in and somebody's in mental health crisis and they're a threat to themselves or others? I mean, I just think we really need to be careful. We need to assess what police are doing in our communities. And I'm all for reform and innovation in policing. I've worked on that, passionately for the last few decades. But, to just simply say defund, I think is no more than a slogan. And I think it's an irresponsible slogan.
Anyone else would like to weigh in on that topic?
This is Chief Williams. Chief O'Toole is absolutely and totally right. When you say defund, what does that mean? At the end of the day, at 3 o'clock in the morning, who's going to roll on those calls? Because no one else will roll on those calls except for people in blue suits or brown suits, depending on where you are across the country. No offense. I will say this, though. There are calls that law enforcement has to respond to because no one else can at the moment, that we never should have been responding to. We should have never been responding to mental health calls. We should have never been responding to homeless calls. So there needs to be some kind of balance, a societal balance, funding balance that doesn't include defunding us, because Violent crime is very real. Homicides, domestic violence, murders. ATF could tell you gun crime is on the rise too. So we need to be part of the mix, but we should be part of the solution when it comes to all things to keep the community safe.
Thank you, Chief. I'll take this as the last question. This actually is for AD Nunez, but I think it is a question for all of you. As you moved up in law enforcement, have you ever doubted yourself? And if so, how did you ever overcome the battles of the pressures of the job?
Absolutely. I've always doubted myself. I think we've all suffered from that imposter syndrome. Like, oh my God, who have I, put a wool over their eye to get to the position where I'm at. I remember being the special agent in charge, sitting in my corner office, overlooking the city of Chicago, thinking, how did I get here? Who did I fool to get here? So I think we've all have gone through that. Anyone who says they have not gone through that is lying, because I think we've all have been there and have done that, and second guess yourselves. But you know what, though, I have wonderful people around me that remind me every day of the hard work and sweat that I've put into to be in the position I am today, and I'm grateful for them, actually, and I'm thankful for them. And sometimes when I'm feeling down and I'm feeling like, oh, I need somebody to beat me up, I'll pick up the phone and I'll text Chief O'Toole, or I'll call somebody that, hey, give me that pep talk I need to get me back up again. But I think it's a natural thing, especially for women, to feel, hey, do I have the right to have a seat at the table? You say it to yourself and you think it, and then you hear everyone around you speak and you're like, yeah, I darn right belong at this table. So I think it's a natural instinct.
Good. Thank you, AD Nunez. I would be remiss if I did not give at least one question from one of my male counterparts. As a male police supervisor, what are the best approaches to proactively support my female colleagues in their career progression? So tell us guys how we can continue to make sure that we're supporting females in law enforcement.
So this is Chief Williams. Treat everyone the way you want to be treated. It doesn't matter what they look like. They could be purple, they could be orange, they could have different anatomical parts. It doesn't matter. So we should promote good leadership and good behavior. And for those male counterparts, much like Kathleen and Sylvia, and I think Zach Nunez said, I had a lot of male counterparts that tapped me on the shoulder to say, this is a job that you should take. This is your skill set. This is what you should do. And we all have second guessed ourselves and doubted ourselves, absolutely. But at the end of the day, if it's not me, then who? We lead with integrity, we lead with intelligence, but just treat her or them or they as if you would someone that you're very comfortable with. Just don't make it weird. We're just human like everyone else.
Good. Thank you, Chief. Chief Moyer.
Sure, I would encourage this gentleman who asked the question to invite a woman into the table, right? Jerry and I talk about it all the time. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And we say, look, give somebody an opportunity, give a woman an opportunity to perform in a way that perhaps would not be thought of first. We have a lot of women that report back to us that they are asked to go to assignments that are more administrative and they really want to take an operational track. I can tell you that my operations experience gave me confidence and it gave me a leadership credibility that really led the way for me. And that was because I had male mentors who tapped me on the shoulder. And Winston Churchill talked about this. When you're tapped on the shoulder, you better be ready, right? There's a great quote everybody should look up about that. We should be ready. So I would encourage this cop to tap a woman on a shoulder for perhaps a position, to give her a nudge, because this is what research says. Research says that when there is a job, an assignment that requires perhaps 50 prerequisites, a woman will do all 50, maybe 53. But our male counterparts are courageous. A man will have maybe 30 and say, well, I'm just going to go for it. that our men have courage that women don't have. And I would encourage this man to tap a woman on the shoulder and say, just go for it. Just like Nunez talked about, AD Nunez talked about being tapped on the shoulder and encouraged. I would encourage this man to give women nudges and give them opportunities to be parts of projects and assignments that he may not have thought about a woman in that position.
Thank you, Chief.
Sure.
So, ladies, we went over, and I want to thank you so much for your time. And we got about 5 minutes before 7:30. So what I would like to do is maybe each one of you just take a couple of minutes, some closing thoughts, some closing statements that you may have. So I know I started with Chief O'Toole first, and I ended with AD Nunez. So let's do the reverse now. I'm going to take a page out of Chief Williams' book. We'll do a reverse here. So AD Nunez, we'll start off with you. Some closing thoughts and comments.
I want to leave one of my favorite quotes from Madeleine, former U.S. Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, and live by that quote, and is there's plenty of room in this world for mediocre men. There's not enough room for mediocre women. So always strive for excellence. Do as best as you can all the time, even when no one's watching. And if anyone is interested in an ATF career, we are hiring right now. Email address is my name, Selena, CELINEZ .Nunez, NUNEZ @atf.gov. Please send me your resume and why you want to be an ATF agent.
Thank you, AD Nunez. All right, Chief Williams, you're up next. Obviously, you have a response to the hiring protocols of ATF.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Zach. You put in that shameless plug. Closing comments, everything that's been said on the call has been amazing, but I want to offer this. If you want to walk on water, you have to get out of your boat. And if your boat is what's comfortable, if your boat is holding you back, you have to stretch yourself and be confident, be transparent, be honest, and be willing to be a little bit afraid and nervous to embark on that next adventure. And if I can do it, you can do it.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Moyer?
Sure. My parents always used to say to me, Sylvia, first of all, they say act like a Moyer, which I had to figure out what that meant. The other is everyone's strength used to excess becomes their weakness. I'd encourage folks that are on this webinar to really examine, are you overusing one or two strengths, and really build a base of strengths. And so I would encourage everyone to continue your education, reach out to the people that have offered on this call and in your sphere. And really, policing is the best job in the world. Wherever you do it with gusto. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And Chief O'Toole, we started with you and I will close with you.
Well, thanks very much, Bray. I just want to say what an incredible privilege it is to be on this call with all these incredible women. I mean, this is what it's all about. I mean, they're wonderful executives, but more important, they're wonderful human beings. They're people who truly care about the people in their communities. And I hope that we've been able to convey a message tonight, and kind of give a sense for what policing really is all about. And I hope we've been able to convince many of you in the audience that it is a wonderful vocation. It's a wonderful career. And we need more people who understand that policing is a service and who are willing to provide that service in our communities. So thank you again to you, Bray, and to Roseanne and to John Jay College for providing us with this incredible opportunity.
Good. Thank you, Chief. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've had some outstanding ladies this evening to talk about their careers in law enforcement. All have, risen to the top of their profession. And I think after this hour and a half, you could see why, that they all became chiefs. They're now assistant directors, one of the highest ranking persons in the federal government, because of the thoughts and ideas and what they've shared with you this evening. I was in law enforcement, as you know, and ultimately went to the dark side and became an attorney. But although I spent a career as a lawyer, the later federal government, I always look back and say, as Chief O'Toole sort of alluded to, that roll call, that I always considered myself a police officer first. And it's those friendships that I built while on the job that I still have today. And a lot of that has to do with my time at John Jay, Roseanne. The law enforcement officers that I met when the kid from Jersey came over into New York City, and I was accepted. So those of you who are looking for a career in law enforcement, that continue with your education at John Jay, it's one of the best values that will ever get a return on your investment. So Roseanne, thank you. Ladies, once again, thank you so very much. It's been a true privilege to have the opportunity to be with you this evening. And Roseanne, thank you to you, and to thank you to John Jay College for hosting this event.
Absolutely. The thanks goes to all of you. I do want to let people know that you should look into the Department of Athletics. They will often bring in folks from FDNY and NYPD to simulate what a test might look like. They bring like the human-sized dummies for FDNY, and they'll do other things. So talk to the folks in athletics. When we get back to campus, I'm sure they'll resume those types of free workshops for those of you who want to see what it's like to take those exams. I didn't want to leave without mentioning that. Again, thank you all so much. There were some beautiful things said about all of you in the Q&A from your colleagues to further verify how amazing you are. And I want to thank all of you. Those of you who attended, you will get a thank you email, and I will put in that email, with the permission of the panelists, any social media handles or emails that they give me permission to share. So don't worry, we will include that in our thank you email to you tomorrow, along with the link to the recording in case you missed any of the great advice and want to go back and listen to it. With that, I again want to remind where we can be found. We can be found at alumni at jjay.cuny.edu anytime. My colleagues and I check that email daily, and I hope that you will consider giving back to John Jay in any way. And if you have questions about how to do that, you can contact myself at the email that I mentioned below. So again, thank you everyone for sharing your time. You can be anywhere for an hour and a half, and you chose to be with us. And for that, I am very grateful. Thank you. Understand how dynamic your John Jay alumni are and strive to be that. So Bray Barnes, amazing. Thank you. And just thank you. I don't even know what else to say. It's been wonderful. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you again, ladies.